And welcome everyone to episode 90 of One Piece at a Time, the One Piece read-through podcast where we read and discuss 5 chapters of the One Piece manga each and every week. I'm your host, Derek Bittner, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host and freelance letterer at Shonen Jump, Brandon Bovia. How you doing, Brandon?
Hey everybody, I'm Brandon Bovia, and I'm pissed. I'm also the letterer of manga like Kaiju Number 8 and Dragon Ball Super and many, many more, but for the purposes of this podcast, I'm very upset.
So yes, we are not talking about 5 chapters of the One Piece manga as much as we wish we were, because instead we are covering movie number 7, The Giant Mechanical Soldier of Karakuri Castle. And I think this is the last movie you've never seen.
Yes.
Yes. And I had seen this before, but I remembered nothing of it. And now I remember why I remembered nothing of it. So if it's not obvious, no, this was not a good one.
No. It started to feel like Dead End Adventure and Baron Matsuri are just like, they are flukes. They are the diamonds in the rough for this era of... I swear, as somebody who is, again, now I've seen every other One Piece movie, like, they get better. Yeah. We're not quite there yet, but they get better.
Yes. It's nice to see quality take hold at points. Yeah. And that's not to say there's usually something positive to latch on to with some of these movies, it seems. But before all that, just the usual quick notes on movie 7. So this was released March 4th, 2006, right between chapters 401 and 402. So that's why we're recording it now, and between episodes 257 and 258, which is basically right before Sniper King appears on the train to Enies Lobby. That's where the anime was at. Obviously, with this movie taking place not on Water 7 or Enies Lobby, we can assume that this takes place before that.
Yes. Pretty much the only place it could take place in.
Yeah, pretty much, because we get something related to something that happens in Enies Lobby, but we'll get to that. As for our plot summary, this is pretty easy. It's another treasure hunt, because open with the crew finding this treasure box in this wrecked ship. And it turns out inside is actually an old lady. The old lady tells them that there's this great golden crown that tells them that they're like the king of the sea if they have it back in her home island. And they have to use this special turtle compass in order to reach it, because you can't get there through the usual log pose. So they arrive there, and immediately the woman's son, who's just this mechanical genius, starts trying to defend it because, well, they're pirates. And eventually they learn that this song that is sung on this island leads to the treasure. So they start trying to figure it out. Eventually the guys trying to fend them off realize these guys are kind of strong. We should team up. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Wink, wink. I'm not going to betray you later. So they team up. They figure out the treasure hunt. Oh no, your sudden but inevitable betrayal has happened, and they're taken over. And it turns out the entire island is a giant turtle. And they want to use this turtle with the mechanical devices to take over the world.
Of course.
Just giant battleship, essentially. Of course, yes.
Yeah.
So Luffy and them must stop them, and they do. And the treasure turns out to be the eggs, the golden eggs of the babies that this turtle has every 1,000 years. And that's the movie.
Yeah. Well, and God, I feel like even summarizing it like that makes it sound better than it is. Because like that's a fairly like straightforward plot, but like I think if you still had like good pacing and, kind of like interesting set pieces and kind of like, okay, there's sort of like an escalation and we're kind of gradually learning more about the backstory of this place and figuring things out, and there's tons of like fun action to move the story forward. There's none of that. There's none of that.
No, it's kind of amazing how boring this is. Every fight, it honestly feels like one of the early movies stretched thin.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're right. Because I hadn't thought about that, but it is sort of similar in concept to like the first couple movies, but those were 50 minutes.
Yeah. You got in there, you had your silly treasure adventure, you beat the bad guy, and you were done. You know,
And
that
that
was
might
really it.
have something to do with it, because like this movie is excruciating at 90 minutes, and I think if it were 40 minutes shorter, I might have liked it okay. I think I could have been like, yeah, that was nothing special, but like that was fine. But this drags. It's so, ugh.
The animation is not great.
Yeah.
There are times where you look at, because we had this with Baron Matsuri last time, where the faces were kind of very much blank in the background, and they try to do that here, but it feels like they're trying to still place the eyes, and they just feel off and weird. And then you get these weird proportions at times, especially with Nami and Robin, where their waists are just nothing.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is that like it's really inconsistent, and not just in terms of quality, but also just in terms of like art style. Like even just like the close-ups, like you really get the sense that they're just kind of being drawn by different artists at different points. The style never really lands on anything in particular, and that really lends me to feel that it was just kind of rushed, and you had a bunch of animators kind of doing their own thing, because there's not a whole lot of cohesion in this movie's visual style, except for one thing. There's one thing that's cohesive, or perhaps two.
Yeah, they were very focused on that. So yeah, the one thing about this movie that stands out that is it is well remembered for, the only thing it's remembered for really, is gravity got weird in this movie. Nami and Robin's breasts are not only accentuated, but the slightest turn makes them just feel like they're straight out of Dead or Alive.
It feels like they knew that they had nothing to work with, so they were just like, well, just fill it with boobs, and you know, like that'll be it. And man, it just. I think the fact that this is just kind of like a nothing movie, then that it's just kind of like quick, you know, like put a bunch of fan service in it, just makes it feel super cynical. Even though I know like this is so the animation director and character designer for this movie is a fellow by the name of Eisaku Inoue, who was also the character designer, lead animation director for movie 2, which also had probably it's not that much, but like more fan service than I think for usual. For One Piece, and then I guess in this movie they just kind of let him pop off, and he's just all right, you know, fill it with boobs, and that's really it.
Yeah, I'm looking through his other credits. He does a lot of key animation and animation director for like just individual episodes or OVAs. That seems to be where he really sort of focuses on. Like I can't point to any one thing and be like, yes, this is why it's like this, but I mean, he did some, like OVA episode 10 of Tenchi Muyo, the original Tenchi Muyo. He was the animation director on episode 4 of Street Fighter 2 V. It's just all over the place. He's not consistent in any one thing. He just sort of pops up here and there.
Yeah. Although one consistent thing, which it took me a little bit of digging to find this, and it's the reason why I had this thought in the back of my head that I was like this movie feels like it's kind of ahead of its time. Bear with me.
Okay.
In the sense that where the anime was at in terms of like its art style is nothing like this. But I was like, this is kind of what the anime looks like for a good little while. And it's because Inoue he's the character designer for the arc after Enies Lobby.
Oh, okay.
And I think a little bit past that. So there is a chunk of time for the TV series where he is kind of in charge of the designs and stuff, which is why I was like, you know, for 2006, this like feels further ahead than where I thought it would be, and I think that explains why.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It also has heavy use of 3D. Like the turtle is always 3D. There's a minecart ride that's in full 3D.
Which is nothing new at this point, but
they're decent-ish. Like the turtle doesn't look that bad, and the roller coaster ride is honestly pretty decent.
It's better CG than movie 5. That's about as much as I'm willing to give it. But at the same time, like even the modern One Piece movies still kind of have bad CGI, so I can't really, in good faith, like has that as a genuine knock against this movie, because like there's even Film Red, as much as I love it, has some really awful CG.
Yeah, it's So I think the big problem here, for me at least, is that for whatever reason, this is the first time Luffy is dead set on a treasure itself rather than just the adventure of finding the treasure.
That stood out to me as something really bizarre. And that, I mean, that's sort of the thing with a lot of these movies and a lot of the anime content, that it does feel like these characters aren't really quite right. But that one was like, I think, because I feel like it's very rarely Luffy who feels off in sort of the anime original content. So that stuck out to me as like, is that something that he would do, to the point like the sort of the crew dynamic and how Luffy is kind of the lead of it all, just feel it doesn't quite gel for me.
Not exactly, because, you had that sort of inspirational speech and quotes there where he's like, I don't care if the treasure is real or not, I'm going for it. And everybody's just like, yeah. Like, why are you? Yeah, it's just a treasure. Like, it's not like there's no heart of the story, because you got this old woman pouring her heart out. It's like, my boy's really a good boy. He's just off this, and I still love him despite the mistakes he's made and all that stuff. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, your son is not a fun villain at the slightest, and his ultimate punishment after getting beaten by Luffy is getting spanked by her. It's like, okay.
And I think so. I guess this is the part where we'll talk about Ratchet, because I think what they were trying to go for with him is like this sort of like Revenge of the Nerds, lives in his mom's basement kind of otaku guy. Because, like, oh, he loves robots, he's a genius, he doesn't treat his mom with any respect, and his mom still tries to see the good in him and all that kind of stuff. Or it just like, but I feel like that was never really properly conveyed. And Ratchet himself is always kind of, I mean, he's as one-dimensional as it comes, to the point, like, I think where the movie lost me, which is further along than maybe it should have, is the part where he reveals that his secret plan was to take over the world. And like, Nami's just like, well, that's lame. And like, that's when it was like, this movie doesn't believe in itself. Like,
no,
that it doesn't believe in its own villain and its own story, or like what he's trying to do and what he's trying to accomplish. Like, yeah, taking over the world is a kind of a dumb idea, and like everybody knows it's dumb, but like, I guess they don't really own it. Like, it feels like they're ashamed that this is the best they could come up with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just feels off. Like, you never take him seriously.
And I think what I wanted to get at is that, like, I think there's a version of the story where, like, it is intentional that he's not taken seriously, but like, you don't take him serious. Like, he's a threat, but he's not,
Yeah, because there's this whole thing during the final fight with Luffy where it's like, Luffy's like, oh, that mechanical soldier is so cool, and Luffy beats it, and he's like, go fetches another one, which is supposed to be like land and sea. He's like, that's lame. And like, Luffy's even saying it's lame. It's like, oh, okay, well, I get the joke, I guess, but
it's kind of super deflating for like the last 10 minutes of a movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Like here's my ultimate plan, and blah blah blah, and it's like, oh, and then he just calls it lame. Like, at that point, like, there's no saving the movie. But like, man, yeah, the fact that like Luffy and Zoro and Sanji and the gang, like, they all like
they don't struggle at all,
or even really fight. Yeah, like, there's no tension, and I think again there could be intention to that. To be, it's like to make it funny, to make it.
I thought that's the way they were going to go, because it's like in the beginning it felt like there was just comedy. It's like, oh, it's going to be a funny movie rather than anything else, and then it just sort of stopped and started taking itself somewhat seriously. Like, there was still comedy elements, but they tried to go for the more adventure angle at a certain point, and none of that really worked. Like, I enjoyed them trying to figure out the clues from the song, and where they thought it was trying to be like mysterious or whatnot, most of the time it ended up being dumb puns.
Oh boy, that they're just the most like bargain bin like of Japanese wordplay.
Oh really?
Like, oh yeah.
Which is how they react. It's like, really, it's that dumb, and it's them making fun of their own story a lot of the time.
Yeah. It just it feels like they didn't know what they wanted, and they knew that this was a stinker. That's sort of the vibe I get watching this movie, is that it is kind of ashamed of itself.
It definitely feels that way. And maybe it's just me, but after a while of listening to Ratchet, obviously we watched it sub, but was the actor kind of bad?
Yes. Okay, I was gonna talk about that.
I'm not in a position to really criticize Japanese voice acting. Usually it's like kind of fine, but there's a lot of times where it's just like some of the deliveries work, but other times when he's like trying to be serious, it just comes across as
super
kind
flat.
of flat. So I looked him up, and there's this guy named Goro Inagaki who's mainly done dramas, and a few movies. Most of the time, only a couple animations. I think One Piece was like his second time as doing voice acting, but that was like when he did the first time, it was in 1994, and he was born in 73, so he was relatively young, and he got older and kind of worse. I don't know. It's just
I think what happened is that because this is something that I've noticed every now and again, like anime style voice acting, I feel like is kind of like its own thing. And that, like, the way that the characters emote, like, of course, it's especially in something like One Piece, it's very exaggerated, and very, very kind of like emotive. And I think his style probably just wasn't a good fit for that. And again, this movie was also, probably rushed to hell, so he probably didn't get very good direction on what to do. On top of them, I feel like for Ratchet as a character, they didn't even know what they were doing with him. So like I feel like he was trying to. He was trying to do his best, maybe, but I definitely think for someone who's such like a seasoned actor that it just like this tone. I think even in One Piece at like firing on all cylinders, I think he would have been a weird fit just as a drama, kind of screen actor. But in a kind of a poorly put together rushed movie like this, I think it really shows.
Yeah. It's unfortunate because nothing. It was very rare to get an actual laugh out of Ratchet because of he even just had that visual thing where he'd steam up his glasses and he'd have the wipers come out, and it's like, okay,
it's a funny gimmick on its own, but like the performance and really just kind of like the tone of the scenes that he's in, like it doesn't really fit. It feels it just doesn't feel right. And that goes into also, I think, speaking of voice actors, I noticed this right away. But Chopper has a new voice for this movie.
Yes.
And I hate it.
We have a replacement for Ikue Tani because she was out on maternity leave for it. And instead we got Kazue Ikura, who is very much
seems like another vet.
Big vet. She was Kaori in City Hunter. She's done Gundam. She was Satori in Ranma 1/2. Kaori in she's like the character's named Kaori in Detective Conan. Like she's been in a ton. She was even in One Piece before as I don't know who Jessica is. I think that might be a filler character.
I don't remember.
Here you go. You're a Gundam fan. She was in Gundam 0083 Stardust Memory as Mora.
Oh, I don't remember who that is.
Oh, okay. Well, so much for that.
Yeah, but I do. I've seen that OVA before. But yeah, like there's. I guess I think the thing with like Ikue Otani's Chopper is so, and like her voice in general is just iconic. Like she's freaking Pikachu. Like
she knows how to get emotion out of being cute.
Yeah. Like when it comes to like just like adorable, cute mascot characters, you don't really get much better than that. And so it was always going to be a stretch no matter who they got, but it definitely you feel this poor person just like it, like you can feel their throat hurting trying to imitate Otani, and it just doesn't work at all. It kind of grates my ears, honestly.
Yeah. And all the characters just feel off. Like Nami is probably at her most violent. She beats up the crew so many times.
Nami's tuned really high in this one for some reason. And I sort of, grasping at straws was kind of like, the idea of like a Nami-ish led movie is kind of really cool on paper. But like, they really just, like, it feels like she's constantly arguing and constantly just like at odds with Luffy in particular. And it's like that stuff is a part of her character, but it has to come in balance with, so many other things.
She doesn't get really a time to shine other than the lightning, which is actually was what activates the whole villain plan. So it's like, because around every corner, rather than her figure it out, Luffy figures it out
by like complete accident. And
yeah,
that could be that's like the beginning of a joke. Like that could be really funny. But like I feel like they don't really go anywhere with it. They don't really like escalate with it, and they don't have anything of value to say with it.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
every piece of the puzzle, Luffy's the one who figures it out or stumbles across it in some way.
Yeah, which is maybe part of the core conceit that like all of the puzzles are really dumb.
Yeah, you can see it from that
like,
angle.
So that like maybe but it just there's something about the way that it's all like paced and put together that it doesn't really it is a joke, but it doesn't feel like a joke.
Yeah, it's it's not great. I'd say Robin is pretty well handled here.
Yeah, there's God, I feel like I'm struggling to remember any exact moments, but it felt like she was having fun was kind of the general gist I got from this movie, is that like Robin was like actually enjoying herself.
Yeah, it's almost like she was kind of you kind of knew that it was going to be her arc coming up. They knew that, so like let's have fun with her, and they definitely they emphasize her whole puzzle solving mechanic and gimmick and whatnot. Although she doesn't get the fight, like she's with Sanji. Doesn't help him fight because he's like, no, I got this.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a missed opportunity. I mean, not that it was much of a fight to begin with.
No, it really was mostly off screen where the guy like it comes out off screen. You hear Sanji took 10 blasts to the face and he's looking mostly fine, and then he finishes it off with just a few kicks.
Yeah, imagine like if Robin and Sanji got to team up and like. Zoro ends up leaving Nami on the roller coaster to do his like fight for like 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But God, like imagining a scenario where like they actually could have, because there's only like Ratchet and like his 2 goons basically. So like there's way more Straw Hats than there are villains to go around.
Yeah, so. It just didn't have much of a plan, and even the title of this thing, the Giant Mechanical Soldier of Karakuri Castle. Okay, I think I know what Karakuri Castle is. Was the mechanical soldier just the final thing that Luffy fought? Because it wasn't a primary piece of the whole thing.
Yeah, maybe it was the mechanical soldiers, where was all the Iron Men that he fought. I guess.
I guess.
I don't know. This movie clearly doesn't give a crap. Why should I?
it is all over the place. It is all over the place. Like characters get like one little thing to do and that's about it. But they had way more fun putting Nami and Robin in other outfits.
Yeah, they really did. Which does kind of become a staple, not just for them, but like for the Straw Hats as a whole. And down the line, that will become a staple of. I feel like everybody gets like 2 or 3 outfits every movie these days.
I guess that's true. But it's like they got to that dinner party randomly, and all of a sudden they're just
that was.
Decked out of like here, just all the side boob and just everything we could show that we without getting in trouble.
And it's not even like that's it. Like they change out of those outfits immediately after. So
and Nami cosplays as Lara Croft,
which is kind of her best fit. Funny enough, in this movie, I think it's great.
It works.
It's a great outfit. I like Robin's last outfit too, but yeah, it's funny that it's just literally Lara Croft.
Yeah,
I do like that the Straw Hats spend the majority of this movie together. I think that is not a high praise necessarily, but I do think rather than kind of like everybody kind of going their own separate ways and kind of having multiple subplots going on, which I think not having any subplots at all, I think kind of lends this movie to feeling like it's just spinning its wheels for most of the runtime, but like. Having all 7 of the Straw Hats kind of just like interact here in this space, I thought I appreciated that, even if the writing itself didn't quite live up to that.
I didn't honestly think about that for the most part. It's just like, oh yeah, they are together. Even if when they're split apart a little bit, they kind of come back. Like it's at the very end where you have Chopper like, I'm going to translate the turtle. Usopp, I need to make sure Mary's okay. Robin's on the mine cart. Nami's on the mine cart. Robin's with Sanji. The other two have their fights, and of course Luffy's fighting the main thing, and that's how they kind of break off. But they come together quite often as well. Like it is what it is.
Yeah, I feel like in a better movie, like I really wanted to see them explore like the castle. Like I feel like there could have been a version of this movie that actually had, you know, like tricks and traps and that sort of thing. But it's kind of just over before it started.
Yeah, you just
for the most part.
Not really much there.
And I'm glad at least I noticed right at the start of the movie, I was like, oh, that looks like a roller coaster. I wonder if that'll be anything. And like, okay, yeah, and you know, lo and behold, they actually make use of it in all right, I guess.
Yeah, fine enough. The one thing that did stand out to me is the music in this movie is actually pretty great. Like even from as soon as they arrive and they have somebody singing the song, the swaying song. I'm like, that's actually really well sung. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, it's definitely it's really uncanny to me because like a lot of really iconic music that the anime still uses, but like a lot of really iconic scenes from the anime use music from this movie. So you have a lot of instances where like the music is playing and I'm thinking about like all of the other like much cooler moments where like these themes actually played in, because in context it's kind of super lame. Like I mean like it felt like they had all this great music and they didn't know where to put it, so they just like put it wherever.
Yeah, it's just like this will work. That's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. Like I want to say as soon as once the anime gets to India's Lobby, which of course they're not quite there, they're almost there. But I think once you get to India's Lobby, the anime starts using a lot of music from this movie, and it's awesome. It's gret.
Works
it's
way better.
Yeah, it's some of the best music in the series. It's just the fact that it got its start here is just weird.
It's funny how that happens sometimes, but there was one. Of course, I think there's one reason for this movie to exist. There's one thing they wanted to accomplish with this movie, and it's honestly kind of amazing they didn't advertise it in the same way that the Dragon Ball movie did for that kind of accomplish the same thing, where it's a preview of Gear 2.
Yeah, and so I knew that going into this movie, at least that like Luffy, I remember hearing it a long time ago that it's sort of like it tries to offer an explanation as to like where Gear 2 came from, but like I feel like even giving it that kind of credit is giving it way too much, way more than it deserves, because it just kind of happens.
Yeah, it's just he's fighting against this random big mech and he's trying to hold it off, and he does the thing with his legs and he starts steaming. And he's like, oh, what was that power? Weird.
Yeah. And in fact, the more that I think about it, the more I don't like that, actually.
No.
Because I think Gear 2, even though it is left very vague in the manga, I think you can extrapolate that it is informed by Luffy's experiences up to that point. It is informed by like finding a way to fight at top strength. You know, it's informed by his encounters with CP9 and, you know, all sorts of, you know, all of his fights up to that point. And so kind of the anime gives a much more literal interpretation of, oh, he figured it out because of like this random side story where he just accidentally turned it on.
Yeah. He's just the pressure of the moment, he used it, and then he sort of masters it by the time he gets to Enies Lobby. Yeah.
Which I think if the circumstances itself really felt more like, oh man, Luffy's like against the wall and he's out of juice and like he can't do anything. If it really felt like it was a last resort kind of thing, then maybe. But like it's not. It doesn't really feel like that. It feels random and unearned.
he does not feel pushed up against the wall. I don't know if Luffy even takes a solid hit at any point during this, where he's like,
yeah, I'm not sure,
on the back ropes. There's just no tension at all. It's
in a weird way, it would have been a better fit for movie 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Those have much better moments of like putting Luffy on the edge. But of course, I imagine if you were, you know, a One Piece fan in 2006, you know, like the anime hasn't gotten to Gear 2 yet, so it's like, oh, what's this? and it just happened in the manga, like 15 chapters ago from where we're at.
Mm-hmm.
So
And they're still teasing what Gear 3 might be where we're at.
Yeah, we still So it's like it is. I mean, God, on the one hand, it is kind of like admirable. Maybe not admirable, but it's very surprising just how close the anime was to the manga at this point in time. To the fact that like the anime hadn't gotten to Gear 2, the manga we still don't. We've seen Gear 3 off screen. So like these core abilities of Luffy's, like we still really don't even know what they are, but they saw it fit to like, we'll put it in anyway. And so as much as I much prefer how the manga keeps it vague, like I can't. It's just a cool tease at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not too upset about it.
It's kind of similar to DBZ movie, I think 4, Lord Slug.
Lord Slug has the like the faux Super Saiyan thing,
right? Because they even call it like Super Saiyan something in Japanese for the Japanese title. Where it's like, no, Super Saiyan's in this, and you see the faux Super Saiyan, it lasts for like 2 seconds, and like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
same thing here.
Which, funny enough, that also, we're still doing that now in One Piece movies.
Oh, really?
To say the least. Yeah. Still doing things that the manga just did that the anime hadn't gotten to yet. So.
Of course, it's to get those teases. Yep. It's
a
way to put butts in seats.
It works.
yeah, for sure. It's funny too because it just doesn't seem like Luffy needs it because we got that whole final attack at the end where
he just becomes a Beyblade.
Yeah, he just
who cares about Gear 2, man?
The entire castle, this entire mechanical castle with no issue, and Zoro and Sanji are the ones who stop him from hitting the turtle. Like,
yeah, I don't know what like it's kind of cool on paper, like because it's a combo move where it's like Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp all kind of like bouncing off each other, but just like the end result is just it's a little too much even for me.
Yeah,
it's a little too unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just one of those things like that's like we've seen Luffy lift some heavy things like in movie 2, I think it was, where he lifted up like he was trying to keep himself from being crushed. And just lifts up the entire thing through that. Like, that was cool and had impact and showed it. But this is just, like, this just seems ridiculous.
Yeah, and at least, like, in that example, it feels like you're summoning, like, desperate strength. Another example where if they had thought of Gear 2 back in the year 1999, maybe they could have been something. But
yeah, maybe.
That would have been a good spot to use it. But, yeah, this movie just fails at having tension of any sort. Or really kind of, like...
Build up
to anything or having anything meaningful to say about not just like the Straw Hats, but like I feel like when these movies have bad original characters, it also just is. It's like they've given up, like just from the outset.
Yeah,
and we know that it's possible because like Dead End Adventure has an amazing original cast.
Yeah,
Baron of Matsuri has an amazing original cast. These movies can be good.
Yeah. they really are carried a lot by the side characters they decide to add in and how they're treated and whatnot. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but there is no original character to latch onto in this.
Yeah, and I think to getting ahead of myself a little bit, I do think that is sort of the path that I think like the modern One Piece movies have taken, is that like the villains are kind of the spotlight. Like you go to those movies to kind of learn about like who the villains are and to see them interact with the Straw Hats and kind of push them in interesting ways.
Okay.
Because that's like, I mean, because when you think about like anime original content, like you're not going to get meaningful things out of established characters. So
no,
because like you just can't. And I think that is sort of a failing of like movie 5 for trying to be a Zoro movie, without really doing or saying anything interesting with that character. So I do think you kind of have to go whole hog on your OCs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely feels like that. How does your OCs affect the Straw Hats? And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And in this case, it just didn't. This is definitely another case. Like, man, 3, 5, and 7. These odd numbered movies are starting to be a little rough.
Don't trust the odd numbered movies. The movie 1 is still the best odd numbered movie. Actually, given what I know about all the other ones, at least until we get to the modern stuff, Yeah, I think movie 1 might be the best odd numbered One Piece.
Oh no,
movie.
is movie? I mean, I know movie. So the next movie we have is the episode of Alabasta, and I've never seen that.
That's 8.
And then movie 9 is the episode of Chopper, where we have other characters in there that weren't there originally. It's like
I think movie 9 is okay. I haven't seen it in a long time.
Okay.
But like it's just one of those. We'll see. We'll get there when we get there when it comes to like the movie recap stuff or the canon manga arc recap movie stuff. But like you're better off just watching the anime or reading the manga. So it's just kind of like the Drum Island movie does some interesting things from what I remember,
I feel like this is like your best chance to like see this stuff again with better animation.
Exactly. Yeah. And then movie 9 is gorgeous. So
okay.
that much I do remember.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. This might be rock bottom then. I can't say that for certainty because I haven't seen movies 8 and 9 in a long time.
Yeah,
but
I know
as
there's
far
like
as
a
I remember,
3D
anyway.
One Piece movie as well. So
yeah, that too. We've got some. Derek, watching these movies has been a trip. I think that's the point that I want to end on.
yeah, I think that's a good point.
Good God.
Oh man. Well, I don't think we have anything else to say about this.
Yeah, F this movie. It sucks.
Yep.
Don't watch it.
No, that is
Go watch Baron no Matsuri again.
Yep, pretty much. So yeah, we've said all we wanted to say about movie number 7, The Giant Mechanical Soldier of Karakuri Castle. Thank you so much for listening. If you can find more of my ramblings and stream VODs over at BitNerd Games on YouTube or BitNerd with an underscore at the end on Twitter. Brandon, where can everyone find you at?
I'm at Brandon Bovia on Twitter, talking about anime, manga, games, and my job. And I just realized why they call it Mecha Island and why it's always been called Mecha Island in that movie.
Oh, why is that?
It's because it's the reversed syllables of so Mecha, Kame, turtle.
Oh my
That's
God.
Why. That's why.
Another dumb pun. Well, there you go.
Another dumb pun. So go follow me on social media for
more dumb
things
puns
that are better than that. More dumb puns. Hopefully more interesting things than like bargain bin Japanese wordplay.
Yep. Well, if you'd like to help us out more, you can support the podcast over at patreon.com/Derek Bittner. That's DERRICKBITNER to listen to the next episode ad-free 3 days early. And make sure to return next time as we go back to the manga to discuss chapters 406 to 410 of One Piece. So until then, my friends, bye.
Remember to take life one piece at a time.
何この歌。金の冠って島に伝わる歌じゃ。子供でも知っとる。まさかこの歌があるから宝があると？そうじゃ。やっ